Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and very welcome guests. We only need one light to let the darkness know it cannot win. But what if that one light isn't burning? Can you imagine living in the dark? Perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, in that mere 10 seconds of silence, you felt empty, lonely, lethargic, worthless, overwhelmed by guilt, or bereft of self-esteem. You see, those, ladies and gentlemen, are the emotions that affect 5 million British adults every single day, according to the Office for National Statistics. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the emotions that affect 1 in 10 adolescents, according to the Mental Health Foundation, at least once between the ages of 13 and 18. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the emotions that affect 10% of the American population, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, a staggering 17 million people. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the emotions that will drive 15% of those people to attempt suicide. Between December 1999 and March 2002, I served aboard the naval vessel L.E. Ashling as part of my job. If you were to ask me now to sum up that period of my life, I would refer you to a Counting Crows lyric written and sung by Adam Gurritz that states, "There has to be a change, I'm sure, for today was just a day fading into another, and that cannot be what a life is for." Those, ladies and gentlemen, are lyrics I heard thousands of times in my period on the L.E. Ashling. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are lyrics I heard on many an occasion while I was cocooned in my cabin for up to 3 days, surrounded by the dark. But it would take until March 2006 before a visit to the doctor would lead to a diagnosis of depression. At that point, I thought my head was going to explode. I had a lead weight perched permanently on my chest. I had aches in my neck, my shoulder, my upper back, my lower back, the backs of my thighs, my shins, and I was a chronic insomniac. That initial diagnosis led to an offer of some medication, which I refused immediately. An offer of some time off, which I refused initially, and finally to a number of visits to a psychiatrist. With his help and a little bit of time off, but firmly believing that my problems were deeply rooted in a desperate desire to change my occupation, I struggled through the next number of months. And finally, in July of 2006, I escaped the clutches of the naval service and I looked forward to a big, bright future. So in December of 2007, when the darkness descended with a density I had never before experienced, and when suddenly, even the smallest of actions was saturated in sorrow. When getting out of bed was an ordeal. When brushing my teeth was a task of mammoth proportions. When pulling on my seatbelt required superhuman strength. And when I constantly felt I was just one moment from tears. I knew there had to be a change. That feeling that today was just a day fading into another was not what my life was for. But what could I do? The treatments available for mental illness are as wide and as varied as there are forms of the disease itself. But I knew from my previous experience I didn't want to take the medication, and I certainly didn't want to go back down the psychotherapy route. But I had to do something. I decided to educate myself and was left amazed when a visit to Waterstones revealed the self-help section for depression actually contained hundreds of titles. Suddenly, I was not alone. But the book that lit the first light in my darkness was not a self-help book. It was this novel from Gareth O'Callaghan, A Day Called Hope. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when I read this book, I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I met somebody who had felt what I was feeling, who had experienced what I was experiencing. And not just in relation to the disease, but in the treatment of that disease. I find it odd that doctors refer to depression as a state of mind, and yet continue to treat a state of brain. Perhaps that is why antidepressants works for some, but not for others. And perhaps if we can reach beyond the brain and look for a more complete human experience, that will allow a better understanding of the feeling, emotional aspects of depression. Those words resonated with me. and I knew I had lit my first light. From there, I read many self-help books, and each and every one of them helped. But the book that continues to light my darkness is this one, from Louise L. Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Louise L. Hay believes that we can cure anything, from the common cold to cancer, simply by thought alone. Louise L. Hay talks about positive thinking and affirmations. An affirmation is a strong, positive statement that something is already so. And Louise L. Hay argues that if we surround ourselves with affirmations in the same way that surrounding ourselves with positive people makes us feel better, our behaviour will change. Let me tell you, I too was sceptical. But once I had applied her techniques and discovered that they worked for my insomnia, I was hooked. Louise L. Hay is now my daily companion. And thanks to her, I live pain-free from my head to my toe. And as I've said, my insomnia is cured. But don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I am not saying this has been easy, because it hasn't. And there are still days when I think, oh no, today is just a day fading into another. But on those days, as I do every day, I tell myself, I am a very talented person, and a light that never goes out appears. And I tell myself, I am love, and a light that never goes out appears. And I tell myself, I am in perfect balance, and a light that never goes out appears. And I tell myself, I know life always supports me, and a light that never goes out appears. And I tell myself, I now go beyond other people's fears and limitations. I create my life, and a light that never goes out appears. And I tell myself many, many other things, ladies and gentlemen, and every time I do, a light that never goes out appears. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, I have found what 17 million Americans are seeking. I have found what 1 in 10 adolescents will seek at least once between the ages of 13 and 18. And I have found what 5 million UK adults seek today, desperately, and you know some of them. And now, when the dark surrounds me, I don't have one light telling the darkness it cannot win. I have many, many lights telling the darkness it can never win. Mr. Contest Chair.